Welcome in. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz. Greg, another win, another nail biter as USC needs another late game comeback. They pull it out 34-30 against Arizona. Let's go to our five things, and we'll start it off with your play of the game from USC's trip out to Arizona.
Well, you know what? I'm trying to calm down a little bit. But as I looked over what I thought was the play of the game, it really got down to the 19-yard pass play at the end with Slovis to Amon St. Brown on a pass that was tipped by the defensive back, Christian Roland Wallace, that it's a game of inches. And in this case, I got to tell you, I'm going to Las Vegas with Clay Helton, because I think he's got that he's got every possible rabbit's foot lucky number, you call it, for 2 weeks in a row, and probably a little bit for his tenure at USC, to be quite honest with you. So that was my play of the game, because if he intercepts it, it's over. But he didn't, and give the Trojans credit.
I mean, it's over. I mean, that's kneel downs and finishing out the game in his hands and out. It's the second week in a row that USC has really benefited by a tip ball. You go back to Arizona State, and they had a tip pass by Amon St. Brown that ends up in a Brew McCoy touchdown. And then right after that, on the onside kick, there's a ball that's tipped and USC gets it. So that play, that's my biggest play too, certainly. The fact that game changes right there on that play. But I'll follow that up and say that next play, the run with Vavae Malepeai, and he actually gets in the end zone, kind of a funny finish where he ends up, sprawled on his back on top of an Arizona defender, spilling into the end zone a little bit. That's an 8-yard touchdown run. And what we had seen from USC in the red zone, it felt like during that drive, okay, this is inevitable and they're going to put it in the end zone. But that had not been the case once they got close to the end zone. Already 2 drives in that game that came up short when they got in the red zone, missed a field goal and got stuffed on a 4th and short. So to just kind of put all worries aside, and Vavae gets the play there, and a huge hole opens up, and he gets in for the touchdown. Actually doing it, I thought, was huge, because, yeah, you're in a position where you think, okay, this is going to happen. But I think him doing that, and we had not seen a lot from Vavae in that game in terms of kind of getting loose and creating lanes and rushing yardage. So I thought that was big too. But your play, the swing of what's possible there on that play, absolutely massive. Going to the next thing, your player of the game from that game.
Well, I tell you, my player of the game, I think, is going to be the obvious one, and that would be Kedon Slovis. I don't know. He said in the post-game press conference that his arm is fine, but then what struck me is, okay, it depends on what your arm extension is. How about your shoulder? Something. His passes are wobbly. There's something wrong. His follow-through does not look crisp. He says it's his fundamentals and he'll get it corrected. And I really don't expect him to say if he's hurt, to be honest with you. So I kind of took his answer with a grain of salt. But no, when the chips were down, he did what he did the week before, and that's the sign of a winner. It reminds me of 1969. For those of you that are as old as I am, SC had a team that was called the Cardiac Kids, and that was the team that had the Wild Bunch on defense, which saved their bacon over and over. But this team doesn't have the Wild Bunch. But Jimmy Jones was the quarterback of that team, and he didn't have the precision that Kedon Slovis had. But what they both had in common is when the game was on the line, it's almost suddenly, Jimmy Jones turned into Johnny Unitas. And it was almost uncanny the way he could turn it on. And Slovis is able to do that. He's able to pinpoint those passes. And to me, that's the sign of a big winner, even if I did like the way the game was played.
The way the ball is coming out of his hands on more than just one or 2 occasions, it's definitely something that now we're going into the Utah game next week, and that's a front and center point that I think people are looking at. And I thought it was telling, going back to last week, we saw a few coming out of his hand like that against Arizona State, and offensive coordinator, quarterback coach Graham Harrell was really quick to just kind of say, oh, I didn't see it. He brushed it off. That's something that you can see. That's something that's obvious, and that immediately felt like we're not going to call any attention to this. Keaton Slovis again after the game against Arizona, very quick to say, no, my arm, nothing's wrong. My arm feels great. Arm feels fine. Sort of said, I got to get the mechanics cleaned up. Some of the, Keaton Slovis, we've talked a lot about Keaton Slovis being a phenomenal quarterback. And so this is not anything where, it's a decision thing or we're trying to kind of undermine him or undercut sort of what he's doing. But we've seen him play now a lot, and that is not typically how the ball comes out of his hand. And so that is absolutely something that's going to be a talking point and something to watch against Utah. Again, I've kind of derailed here. I'm going to get back to my player of the game. And I wanted to go to a lot of different places. I thought Drake London had a bunch of kind of calming big plays as he's able to go up and pull some of those throws down. But I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He pulled the ball in after that deflected pass late. He had 7 catches, 113 receiving yards. He always seemed like he was kind of the guy that stepped up with a big reception when they needed it and kept the offense moving. I thought that, there were some guys maybe on defense that you could say Drake Jackson had a couple really big sacks when they needed it big time. Marlon Tuipulotu, again in the middle. He leads the defense in tackles against Arizona, but I'll go with Amon-Ra St. Brown as my player of the game here. Third thing, looking at as we're heading into the game and then now having seen it, what is something that met your expectation that you expected to see in this game and you got it?
That's a hard one for me to answer because I don't think other than just the win period, anything met my expectations. And the reason for that is they looked totally undisciplined, outcoached, outplayed. They had 110 yards of penalties. Some of them ridiculous penalties. And it's been a long-standing pattern. My expectation was that they wouldn't have that amount of penalties in the second game. My expectation would be that they would have run the ball with some authority in the first 3 quarters. That was my expectation. But the reality is, I don't think that's what Graham Harrell wants to do. I think he was backed into a corner, and he does it unless he absolutely has to. And I think the thing that was amazing to me about my way of thinking was I heard Urban Meyer basically say the same thing in the pregame show. He was very objective, critical, well thought out. And then I'm watching the telecast like many people were, and Joel Klatt is saying the same thing. What's wrong with the team? I mean, even Gus Johnson, who's, kind of a shrill, when he broadcast was saying, this doesn't look like USC. And when you talk about expectations, did it meet? Okay, they were 12 point favorites. That was my expectation. They didn't reach it, but the question that you asked, and I know I'm kind of rambling here for a second, is they got the win. And isn't that what it's all about, the bottom line? So my expectation is that they would win. That's not how I thought they would win.
Yeah, I do think that, again, fans specifically aren't really going to want to hear a lot of harping on, well, we came up with a win, it's a tough place and any win in the Pac-12 and in this season and all that kind of stuff. And that takes you, I think, to a point as you see it more and more that kind of loses the impact, especially when you're talking about an Arizona team that, again, without its starting quarterback from last year, its starting running back from last year, 5 out of the top 6 tacklers, a team that hadn't played at all this season, and you felt like USC had all of that stuff going for it. Again, just we got to win. There's some games where that's absolutely true, and there's some games where it rings a little bit hollow. For me, the thing I expected and also saw was cutting down on the turnovers. I was surprised last week at kind of the sloppiness there. And so seeing them pitch a shutout basically with turnovers. Again, if you want to count the turnover on downs, if you can't make a 4th and 1, that does count should count as a turnover, but no fumbles, no interceptions. And that was something that I expected to see cleaned up for USC. Now going into the next thing, the 4th thing, again, you touched on it a little bit already, but something that surprised you, something you expected to see and got something totally different in this game.
Well, I totally did not understand the play calling from offensively. I think Graham Harrell should be under intense scrutiny at this point, not because he doesn't know what he's doing in the sense that he knows the air raid offense. That's his thing. I don't dispute that he knows it, but it gets back to, if you cannot run the ball or if you wait till the end, it didn't reach my expectations because this isn't the NFL where in the old days, the quarterback made the calls, right? This is a case where the offensive coordinator is the puppeteer. He tells them what they're going to do. Now, there may be some options, progression of receivers, but this idea of what they're doing with the running attack really does not reach my expectations, because going back to what we mentioned earlier, Urban Meyer, even Joe Klatt, it seems no matter where you're hearing it from, it rings true that you're not going to win championship games unless you can have some sort of running attack. Now, I will say this. I actually saw a draw play. I actually saw a delayed draw. I thought I was going to fall out of my seating surface.
And it worked.
Yeah, well, I've been talking about this for years now. When are you going to run a draw, a lead draw, a screen, something, misdirection? And as you said, it opened it was like the Red Sea parting, and they got through it. But, this team is not reaching my expectations. And I don't think we can say it's COVID. Everybody's working from the same set of variables. Okay. I mean, Arizona had not played a game, Eric, in 100 or 350 days. Okay. They didn't need, this was their first game. They should have been making mistakes. They looked really well coached. Okay. And SC looked like the same team as it was the week before. And so, like I said, they got the win.
Yeah, I think my expectation not met kind of piggybacks with yours. And I know, this was another team that had a defense where USC couldn't scout it. It's not the same look from last year. It's a new defensive coordinator. The expectation, for me, was, well, we're certainly gonna see what we've seen from teams that do well against us or have done well against us. We're gonna see them drop 7 and 8 consistently. Let's come out with a plan to really attack that. And it felt like that plan wasn't there. And if I know they get the early touchdown set up by really great field position, but when you need to wait to get your consistent offense going with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, deep in the game, I'm surprised that USC can't come out sort of anticipating what they're going to see defensively, and to have an answer kind of already to where it doesn't need a halftime adjustment or going into a fourth quarter adjustment or even a final 2-drive adjustment. And I know the running game was there at times. Marquise Stepp breaks off a big run. Stephen Carr breaks off a big run. And Clay Helton points to his number is 175 rushing yards. That's clearly the goal for this team, for this offense. They end up with 173. Check that off, a positive. Now, if you take off the 2 big runs, they're well under 100 yards for the game. And that's on 31 carries under 100 yards. And I know, if you do this and if you do that, you change the whole game. But really, that's 2 big successful runs. You mentioned the draw, and then I also mentioned previously the Malape touchdown run. I don't know if you can find kind of a lot more runs throughout the course of that game that were truly successful, and you're still not able to really find anything on that 3rd and 1, on that 4th and 1 that gets you there consistently. And that was a frustration too, seeing that 4th and very short, and it's the same defender coming around the outside untouched again to stop a USC running back in the backfield on 4th and short. So again, the expectation for me is going to still be there. You know what's coming now. It might look a little bit different, but the idea is going to be the same from these defenses on how to attack you. Find a way early, I think, to do it. And ultimately, like you said, you come away with the win, you get it done late. that's what you need to do. You need to win the game, and you did that. So I think there are some positives to take, but that you got to figure out a way to make this offense sort of feared. I don't think anybody with the guys that you have, skill positions, I don't know how many teams left on your schedule are truly kind of worried about what you might do. I think they're starting to kind of look forward to what they can throw at this USC offense, and I don't think that's where the USC offense sort of wants to be at this point. Let's get into it. The fifth final thing, your biggest takeaway from this game, and specifically how you see that kind of flipping forward and pushing forward to the rest of the season.
Well, my takeaway is that this team plays very hard. Okay. And, the old saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So, they worked hard and they got lucky and they won. I think this wasn't as lucky as the week before because, there was a tip pass, in the end zone last week and, onside kick. And then there was the threading the needle. But, this team doesn't quit. And, they're not a college football playoff team by any stretch of the imagination. But you know what? They could still be a championship team in terms of winning the South Division. There certainly would be underdogs, I would say, if they play Oregon. And that's okay. But, I don't think that any of the remaining games, based on what I saw today, are gimmies by any stretch of the imagination. I don't care what the point spread says. Utah will probably rush 3 guys, but I would venture to say their 3 guys are going to be a lot different than the ASU and Arizona 3 guys. And, there's another team that hasn't played a game yet. And so the idea that if they don't play a game, that's going to be a big advantage. SC's in their 3rd game and, Utah is coming out of the gate. If they even play, we don't even know if they're going to play. But at this point in time, let's just say one game at a time and win it no matter what the points are.
Yeah, I'm going to take a couple of for my biggest takeaways and spinning things forward. One of them is, like you said, this was going back to last week when they get by Arizona State. The thought is you're cruising here. I mean, you've got it set up. Now you look at a Utah team that, again, apparently the kryptonite is going to be don't play a game before you play USC, and then you'll be set up pretty well here. So they're going to get a Utah team again that they don't really have a look at this year. Colorado has gotten off to a good start, and then UCLA is all, it's always going to be sort of UCLA, and Washington State too has kind of, I think, outplayed expectations this year. So that idea that get by Arizona State and then it's a moonwalk to the conference championship game, that's I think officially out the window with this Arizona performance. The other thing that I'm taking from this is we got to see a lot more guys in this game. A little bit of Gary Bryant, the wide receiver. John Jackson the third, he gets his first catch. A big shout out to him. That's a long time coming, and I'm really happy to see that for him defensively. We're starting to get a little bit of taste of Marlon's little brother, Tuli Tuipulotu. He had a couple big plays. Connor Murphy in there a little bit. The linebacker position, you needed to find some guys. I thought Raymond Scott had a couple plays. Got to see Kanai Mauga, who's battled back from a hamstring in there. Chase Williams is another guy that played a little bit, as Talanoa Hufanga had a thigh bruise. So seeing more guys get in the mix after that Arizona State game, that's obviously going to help them down the line. And so that was a good thing to see, I think, from this game, spinning it forward. My last point is real quick. They have shown that they can win these games. And I think that is a positive, and I think that is something to build off of. If you didn't have that against Arizona State, I don't know if you have that against Arizona. We saw, Penn State as a team this year that got just, kicked in the stomach early on against Indiana, and they have not been able to recover. So I think USC finding a way, to win that game last week helps them win this game. And I do think that they keep putting those steps together and they use that as a positive going through. I don't think you need to say that absolutely everything from this game was a positive, but the idea that a win is a win and 2-0 is certainly a lot better than 0-2 or 1-1. That's a truth from this game as well. So that wraps up our look at it. 5 things. For Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.